The heart of my home is the kitchen. And at this time of the year, it's the perfect place to gather and celebrate the festive season. For me, Christmas is all about rustling up some fantastic food and eating it in the company of my favourite people. These are the dishes that I cook when I want to spread a little bit of cheer. These are my Christmas home comforts. Christmas is such a busy time, but you can make the day go a whole lot smoother if you start preparing early. This includes getting ahead of the game in the kitchen too, and I've got some really great dishes you can cook in advance to de-stress the festive season. Starting with this, a make-ahead consomme with tortellini. And as the nights sort of draw in, you get this bowl of loveliness. Our festive food reporter, Annie Gray, samples a seasonal slice over in Austria.
It smells like Christmas just standing here.
And back home, the king of conversation, Sir Michael Parkinson, drops by.
How you doing, boss? You all right?
For an extra large serving of chat and pork.
Well, I just think it's not very slimming, is it?
Look, it's my house. What do you expect? I always hang a big wreath on my front door each December. And inside, the aromas are just as welcoming. That's because I'm preparing a light, spiced and modern version of a classic Christmas cake. Now, I've got to be honest, I'm not a fan of Christmas pudding. Don't really like the flavour, but Christmas cake I really do like, mainly because my family used to make them when I was a young kid. Now, the recipe stays the same. It's entirely up to you what you put in it, dried fruit-wise, but I've got a mixture of sultanas, some currants, glacé cherries over here as well as some apricots, so you can mix and match the different flavours. But the first thing you've got to do is sort of macerate the fruit, and that's soak it in the alcohol. But you've got these nice, plump, dried apricots. They sort of absorb all that lovely alcohol. Add all the dried fruits to a bowl, along with some chopped stem ginger and a glug of your favourite spirit. Mine is single malt whiskey. We just put a small amount in. Just a little bit. And then you leave this so it plumps up. And every sort of half an hour you can go to the bowl and give it a sniff. Next, add the zest and juice of an orange. Give it a final stir, cover it with cling film and leave the fruit to steep in the alcohol for at least 24 hours. To make the cake mix, start by creaming together 175 grams of dark brown sugar and soft butter, followed by 3 eggs. Now, if you're unsure, crack these into a bowl first, otherwise you're going to end up with bits of shell. And you add the eggs one at a time. If you add all the eggs all at once, the mixture separates and splits. It's a good idea just to drop it down a gear once you add the eggs, so otherwise it starts to spray it all over your kitchen. And let's be honest, I've got enough decorations in this place. Now put in a teaspoon of mixed spice and ground ginger. Add 175 grams of plain flour and then stir in your boozy fruit. Now, traditionalists and purists say, as you're stirring the mixture, you're supposed to make a wish. I shouldn't tell you my wish, but I'm going to do while I'm stirring this. I want a clutch assembly for a 1948 Maserati. If anybody's got one. Something about this, when you're making it, even before you put your Christmas decorations up, this is Christmas in a bowl. So just lightly mix that together. You've got this nice sort of texture, which is exactly what we're looking for. With your mix done, grease a ring-shaped baking tin with some butter and wrap the sides in baking parchment to stop it burning. Then pour in your batter and pop it in the oven to bake for 1.5 hours. When it's ready, let it cool slightly and then reach for the bottle again. Now, the key to a good Christmas cake is this next bit. You need to feed it like Christmas pudding. And to feed it, you feed it alcohol with whatever weapon of choice you want. And the idea is every week in the lead up to Christmas, so it's starting to soak in to that nice cake, to keep it lovely and moist, And then to glaze it, we make a simple icing. 200 grams of icing sugar, and then some glycerine or glucose. It's entirely up to you which one you use, but about a tablespoon-ish, which is basically just a sugar syrup. And then 1 egg white. And this is where you get the texture of this icing. You don't want the yolk, I just want the white. As the icing whips, loosen the cool cake from the tin with a knife and a gentle squeeze. Tip out onto a plate or cake stand, then give it another drizzle of alcohol. And then what we can do is then top it with this lovely icing. I'm not going to use a piping bag or anything like that. It's just really nice and rustic, and you just dollop it over the top. You don't want to start spreading this too much, otherwise it's just basically just going to rip the cake off. And you're going to do it bits of cake mixed in the icing. So put a decent amount on to start with. Grab yourself a knife, and we can then start to smooth it out. It's nothing too fancy. Finally, just to finish this off, I've got these amazing sort of candied fruits. These are pears, a little bit of pineapple, nice bit of orange, and we just chop them up. When you get sort of candied fruit like this, it's so fantastic just to put it on whole. Just put a few of those on there. Satsumas, even kiwi as well. And there you have it, my classic Christmas cake with a twist. It's entirely up to you which alcohol you use, rum, brandy, Armagnac. But what makes this really special is the flavour when you taste it. I love single malt whiskey. It's very different to a traditional Christmas cake, which can be quite heavy, to be honest. This is much lighter, but by macerating that fruit in that whiskey, each mouthful, each bite, you get a real hit with that whiskey. That's a great cake. Moist, boozy and intensely flavoured, this is a doddle to make, but impossible to resist. And with those candied fruits glistening like baubles, this cake could convince the Grinch to embrace the season. We've all heard of farmers fattening up their turkeys for Christmas, but fattening their fish? Robbie Wilkison has pioneered the perfect alternative to meat on the big day. Tucked away off Scotland's west coast is the Isle of Gigha, home to Robbie and the UK's best kept culinary secret, our one and only onshore halibut farm.
On the site as a whole, we probably have about 120,000 halibut of various sizes and various ages. It takes an average from fish being hatched in an egg to market, it takes about 4.5 years.
And in that time, the world's largest flatfish can grow to more than 10 feet in length. That's almost as big as my car bonnet, but not quite as pretty.
Some folks say it's not a particularly bonny looking fish, but I think they're pretty beautiful. They've got grace and beauty about them if you stand and look at them long enough.
I think I'd rather eat them. All those fish need more than one big tank, so Robbie splits them into 2 schools. But they start life on the mainland, just a few miles away.
Well, in the hatchery, basically it's where the fish starts out. And there they grade them to a certain size, and then once it's 80 grams to 100 grams, the biggest fish gets sent over here, and we grow them on from 80 to 100 grams up to sort of an average weight of 4.5 kilos.
The hatchery opened in 1991, but it took another 16 years to perfect the art of raising these fabulous fish. Worth the effort though, because the numbers in the wild were dwindling.
They're predominantly a North Atlantic cold water fish. They're an endangered species in the wild. They're a very popular, high-value fish for fishermen to catch. The bane of a lot of fishing is overfishing, and so you can eat Gigha halibut with a clear conscience that it's part of a sustainable stock, which has got to be the way that fish farm moves in the future.
And this farm has the latest kit, a land-based system of aquaculture, where the water is pumped straight from the Atlantic into the tanks where the fish thrive.
We've got an Atlantic halibut, and we're just taking it out to give it a check before we harvest it, and we're just checking fins. The eyes are still there. Fins are all in good condition, and it's ready for the Christmas market. a nice female fish, maybe 7.5 kilos. We harvest every week. We harvest every Sunday, and we harvest about 300 fish a week. On the run up to Christmas, that order will double. It'll double to about 600 fish for the couple of weeks before Christmas, just as the restaurants gear up to serving up the finest quality fish that they can find to keep the customers happy with something different.
Although demand is high all over the UK, not all the halibut make it off the island. Some of its 160 inhabitants get a taste too. Tonight, local chef Gordon McNeil is preparing a festive feast at his restaurant for Robbie, along with his friends and family.
It's fantastic. You can't really go wrong with it. It's this little chef's baby. Pan fry, grill, char grill, barbecue, oven bake, with lots of different ingredients. It's fantastic. It's great as a fest because it's very meaty. There's so much you can do with it. With all the ingredients that are around in the festive season, it's great.
At £12 a kilo, this isn't exactly your everyday fish, but it's always worth trying something a little different at this time of year. Smoked Christmas canopy, anyone?
The beautiful smoked halibut is you can put it with a lot of meaty things like horseradish, chestnuts, cranberry, and they'll fit in wonderful.
So after 4 years in the water and just 1 hour in the kitchen, how well does it go down?
I think it makes a really lovely change from your turkey or your roast, and I think something like halibut adds a really different dimension to a Christmas meal.
Christmas Eve special around ours is halibut for supper. It's really light and a great thing to eat just before the whole Christmas day.
Oh, it's great after all the hard work put in by all the team over the year, from the hatchery right the way through to the chef. It's great to sit back and just relax and enjoy a bit of halibut from producing gear.
Whether you live on the island or mainland, you don't need an excuse to buy this delicious fish at Christmas time. I'd eat it just for the halibut. There are lots of ways to cook this fantastic fish, whatever the time of year. But I'm going to make a halibut dish that's just perfect for a Christmas Eve supper. And I'm serving it with a superb make-ahead ingredient: Korean kimchi pickle. Now, you wouldn't think of pickled cabbage as a classic Christmas dish, but particularly around wintertime, this is the staple of all Korean cooking for me, and the recipe can vary. It's kimchi. Traditionally, it would be done with just cabbage and beef stock. Now, they would make this in the summer, store it underground until it's frozen. Over the winter, they would then defrost it and then eat it. But over the years, the recipes changed and developed into this sort of spicy cabbage. There are hundreds of different recipes, but this is mine. I'm going to use some rice wine vinegar, which is slightly milder than malt vinegar, not as strong, which is perfect for this. A little bit of fish sauce. Now, for me, this recipe is a bit of yin and yang, really. You've got the fish sauce to add the salty sort of flavour, but then I'm going to use palm sugar. You can get palm sugar in various different guises. This is the dehydrated form. It keeps for much longer rather than the palm sugar, which is in the solid blocks or the liquid blocks. And the final ingredient I'm going to put in here is this Korean red pepper powder. It's got a really distinct flavour, but it's one that's fantastic and I think works so well with kimchi. So we just put a little bit in there. It's not hot, but it's sweet. And then we're just going to warm all those flavours in. So put it on a low heat. Now, into the main mixture, we, of course, use cabbage. So this is Chinese cabbage. You can use red cabbage, white cabbage, it's entirely up to you, really. But the key to this is get it nice and thin. Once you've sliced your cabbage, pop it into a bowl. Then add a few chopped red chilies, 2 carrots sliced with a peeler, and some chopped ginger and garlic. Now, rather than add too much salt in this, because we've got the fish sauce as well, what I like to add is some of this seaweed. And this is just reconstituted dulse. You can buy this from the supermarket. All you've got to do is just put it in water to reconstitute it. So it just adds the saltiness you need, I think, with kimchi. Add the seaweed and mix all the ingredients together before stuffing them into a sealable container. Now, the pot is quite crucial because it needs to be airtight. If it doesn't, it can ferment and go off, because we're not going to actually store this in the fridge. This is stored at room temperature. Once you've filled the container to the top, add the juice of a lemon to the pickle liquor. Then pour it into the container and seal. Finish off with a shake to combine. Good idea to do this every day, really, or every couple of days. Just give it a quick mix around. Don't open the lid. Just give it a quick shake around there so all that dressing and acidity gets into that cabbage. And then after a week, that's all it wants, we end up with this. We leave it in a warm place, not in an airing cupboard or stuff like that, just in your house. And you can see what it goes from, this mixture to this mixture. And if we leave it any more, it'll just get less and less and less as well. And I'm going to serve this with some lovely halibut and some nice scallops. The scallops couldn't be easier. I'm simply slicing them thinly and serving them as a Latin American ceviche. Technically, a lot of people say ceviche is raw. It's actually not. You're curing the scallops in lemon juice, lime juice, whatever you want, really. So it's kind of not raw, really. Zest of lime over the top of the scallops, along with its juice, and a seasoning of salt. And just leave those for no more than about sort of 5 minutes, and then we serve them. But the longer you leave it in that lime juice, the more that the scallops will cook. Pour some oil into a pan and carefully fry the halibut on the presentation side first for 2 minutes. And really, it's one of the prize fish, really, so it has to be treated really delicately. I'm just going to sear it, but of course, to get a bit of colour in there, it's just nice to use a little bit of butter. After 1 minute in the butter, carefully turn the fish over and fry for another 2 minutes. And then all we need to do now is serve it. Now, it is quite pungent, so quite strong in flavour. Don't put too much on the plate. I actually feel the scallops already firmed up as they start to cure. All I'm going to do now is just take a nice piece of this fish, lift this on the top, and then finally, just for effect, got these little coriander shoots that are bursting with flavour that you can just put on the top. It's a dish that I absolutely love, that beautiful colour on the fish. This is how lovely halibut should be. You get this gorgeous chunks of meat. You don't need me to tell you this tastes really good. I mean, it's just beautiful. It packs a punch. And that cabbage, you wouldn't believe it. But with the fish and the scallops, I think in the Martin household this Christmas, this might be on the menu. Make a head pickle and quick as you like fish. Make this the ideal stress-free festive dinner. And the punchy kimchi delivers a definite Christmas kick. As well as making savoury dishes in advance, you can also get ahead of the game with your baked treats. We all have our favourites at this time of the year, but one in particular has outlasted them all. As food historian Ivan Day explains.
Christmas would not be the same without a belly full of these mince pies. Their fillings and style have changed over the centuries, but this one, made from a Victorian recipe, is pretty identical to the ones we enjoy today. Sweet, spicy, and really delicious.
But earlier mince pies were a little less fruity. From the 17th century onwards, they actually contained meat. Ivan's going to make a version that was popular in the 1720s. The recipe is by a famous cookery teacher of the time, Edward Kidder. And what do you think he chose for his filling?
In this instance, tongue, the most popular filling for mince pies at this period.
I bet you weren't expecting that. But the tongue was chopped or minced, which is why we call them mince pies today. The recipe also calls for a sweet spice mix containing cloves, mace, nutmeg, cinnamon, salt and sugar.
Mince pies have their origin in an Islamic style of cookery, which combined meat with dried fruit and sweet spices.
This style of cookery came to Europe during the Crusades. Christians fighting in the Holy Land became partial to Middle Eastern flavours and culinary customs and brought them back to England.
The notion of combining meat with sweet flavours might seem strange nowadays, but until the time of the First World War, it was perfectly normal.
Ivan adds the sweet spice mix to the bowl of currants and sugar. along with 2 chopped apples and the zest of an unripe lemon.
One of the rather puzzling ingredients mentioned in Kidder's recipe is this. This is a citron, or a cheddrat, which is very commonly used in this type of cookery. And this one has been preserved in syrup. There's a bitter orange and also a lemon. So I'm going to shred those up too.
Today's Christmas is hard to imagine without mince pies. But back in the 17th century, Oliver Cromwell banned them, along with many other festive traditions.
People wanted their Christmas traditions back, and many people celebrated Christmas secretly until 1660, when Charles II was restored to the throne. And before too long, mince pies and other seasonal delights were back on the menu.
And as their popularity grew, so did the huge variety of fillings on offer, including fish and lobster. But regardless of their contents, one problem still had to be solved.
These ingredients cook very dry inside the pastry, so they needed to add something else to give it succulence. And of course that was good old-fashioned fat in the form of suet.
With the filling mixed, Ivan can move on to the pastry case. Unlike today's round and regular mince pies, Kidder's 18th century versions had rather intricate designs.
The illustrations in the cookery books are clues for you to cut templates made out of what was called pasteboard, what we call cardboard.
Once the pies are filled and topped, they have to be sealed tight.
This tool here, which has got a nice pair of crimpers on the end, so I join the top to the sides and get that pattern that everyone will recognise. And finally, all I have to do is to make a vent hole. My Kidder-shaped mince pies are now ready to be baked.
While the pies are in the oven, it's time to relax and study some of the superstitions that have swirled around these little treats in the past.
There are many myths and folklore about mince pies. One tells us that you had to sit up all night on Christmas Eve in case a ghost came to steal them.
Well, that's one Christmas spirit we can do without. Thanks very much.
So there we have it, Kidder's beautifully shaped, tongue-filled mince pies. I can't wait to give one a go. It's actually very tasty, but I can't detect the meat at all because the spices and the fruit overpower it. I think it's the texture of the meat that comes through. It's very succulent. It's actually very delicious. These mince pies can be made weeks ahead, taste really good, and they are the original Christmas make-ahead.
So we now know the history of Santa's favourite snack. But we need to make sure there's a few left for him when he comes down the chimney, Ivan. Belt-busting food isn't compulsory at Christmas, so why not try something lighter instead? This one packs so much flavour, and it's the ideal antidote to seasonal stodge.
Now, one of my favourite dishes to make in advance is consomme. And it's one of those dishes that have kind of fallen out of favour, really, I suppose, over the years. People think it's more complicated than it is. It's actually really simple.
Roughly chop a couple of carrots and 1 leek and throw them in a pan. Next, chop some fresh thyme and add it to the pan along with some good quality lean beef mince. Then whisk 2 egg whites together.
So it's the whites that will clarify and clear our consomme to give it that classic appearance.
Add the whisked egg whites to the pan along with some beef stock. Then bring it gently to a simmer for 1.5 hours. Don't boil or stir it, because as the egg whites set, they capture anything that could cloud the consomme. While this cooks, I can get on with the pasta.
Now, for a tortellini, kind of going to cheat, really. I'm going to use some pate.
I'm stuffing the tortellini with the pate, and once made, they can be kept in the freezer for months. But first, I've got to get my pasta rolled as thin as I can.
It's a good idea to roll it out a couple of times through the machine, just to make sure it really is thin. I'm going to cut this roughly in half, like that, and then we can start to fill it.
Lay 2 neat rows of pâté filling on the pasta sheet. And then brush around each ball with a little water. Next, lay another sheet of pasta on the top. And use a biscuit cutter to cut out your shape.
And what I'm going to do now is just basically take this mixture, fold it over.
Simply wrap both ends around your finger and press to secure. It doesn't have to be perfect.
I just think they look nice. Purists probably be screaming at the TV now, but I just think they look so much nicer.
Continue cutting and shaping your pasta. You'll need 3 for each serving. And then place them in the fridge. Now time to check on the consomme.
I lift a bit out in the spoon. That egg white is doing its thing. You can see that starting to clear that once cloudy stock. See that? Already starting to come through. You've got bits and pieces in there, but those bits and pieces will actually start to clog up and solidify together as it cooks.
This dish does call for a little time and patience. But while the consomme does its thing, you can do yours, especially if it's Christmassy.
Is that it? Ralph? Going, Dad, don't make me look stupid.
A little tidbit will soon have Ralph the red-nosed dog deer a little happier.
Good boy.
Once the consomme has had its hour and a half, strain the liquid through a muslin cloth.
And then you end up with this amazing consomme, this beautiful, clear, smelling and tasting liquid, which is so, so good. We just leave that to gently warm through, and while that's happening, we can just prepare the rest of our little garnish for our pot. And to do that, I'm going to use a Parisienne scoop. Now, I say Parisienne scoop. If you're from Chelsea, it's a Parisienne scoop. Anywhere else, it's a melon baller, all right? So you just scoop out some courgette.
Once you've scooped enough from the courgette, do the same with a carrot. Then pop the balls into a pan of boiling water for a couple of minutes, along with the tortellini. Once drained, we're ready to serve.
So we take the garnish first of all, your nice veg and your tortellini. Just put a few in the bottom. This is what I like about this. You can almost eat the consomme and you get this little little nugget of gold in the bottom. And then we pour this over the top. The smell of this, just fantastic. You get this amazing consomme. But this is what it's all about. There's something about this that I just love. It just tastes wonderful. This is perfect for one of those dishes that you can make way ahead of time. Make it now for next Christmas. Simple, tasty, and delicious.
This may be a soup in a cup, but it's unlike any cup of soup that you've ever tasted. A rich, deep broth with a light-filled pasta, and it's freezer-friendly too. Make-ahead dishes like these provide a fresh, modern twist on Christmas fare, but some traditional recipes can be made well in advance too. Our festive food reporter, Annie Gray, has been hunting out some fantastic seasonal bakes in the capital of Christmas, Austria.
Nothing beats the glistening lights and sweet smells of mulled wine and spicy cakes like these. Before visiting Austria's street markets, I went high up in the mountains of the Tyrol. There, I met a family keeping the Austrian Christmas baking tradition alive. I travelled to the small town of Niederdorferberg to learn how to make their time-honoured Christmas bread, along with the traditional seasonal butter that goes with it. Farmer Peter Bischofer is getting me started. I've never milked a cow before. Okay, und schnell? There's a sort of sucking motion, quite strong, I suppose, just like a calf sucking at a teat, but it's surprisingly tuggy.
What's remarkable is that I'm seeing these cows being milked now, and in half an hour or so, the milk will be shooting down the mountain.
Yes, you heard me right. The milk is carried on a unique network of zip wires that extend from 30 of the most remote mountain farms straight to the dairy. Sadly, this is one car I can't hitch a ride on.
The main products they make here at the dairy are cheese, kind of big Emmentaler and mountain cheeses, and also butter. And in particular, a type of butter called fassel butter.
Dressed and scrubbed up for the occasion, I'm about to have a go at making this very unusual Christmas treat.
This type of butter is made all year round, usually in these plastic moulds with fairly plain designs on. But at Christmas time, they do something really special, which is to use these old wooden moulds which have a particularly seasonal design on. I've made butter before, but I'm used to the English way of doing things, where we would press out loads of the buttermilk, and it's usually a pasteurised cream that I've worked with before. This is a sort of cultured sour butter. Very interesting. It smells lovely.
Don't worry, gents. I've got this. Not bad, though I have done it a couple of times before.
Fassel butter is really popular at Christmas. It's eaten all year round, but particularly in the festive season, with a thing called Kletzenbrot, which is a sort of spicy, fruity bread, which I'm looking forward to help make.
And when it comes to baking that bread, Peter's mum, Anna, is the unrivalled expert.
Hallo, Anna.
Hallo, Annie.
Hallo.
Wie geht's?
Mir geht's gut. Anna's in the middle of making dough for the Kletzenbrot. There's two types of flour in here, white flour and rye flour, so it'll be quite dark and nutty, a little bit of honey and some yeast, as well as a little bit of salt. So it's pretty much a straight bread dough. And what we're going to do next is add some fruit to it. So we've got hazelnuts, sultanas, we've got dried pears from the garden just behind me. So this really is a very local treat.
Local and loved by each and every generation.
Anna got this recipe from her mother, and she's been cooking it, she says, for more years than she can remember. So it's a real family recipe. I can really imagine that if you're up on the fields above the Tyrol, that a slice of this and a bit of fassel butter would keep you going all day. This is a traditional Christmas bread around in this region. It's eaten throughout the winter, a really good thing to welcome guests. And Anna says her children really like it, and her grandchildren as well. But this really comes into its own at Christmas. And I have to say, it smells like Christmas just standing here.
This is das originale Kletzenbrot.
Anna leaves the bread to rise for about 30 minutes. Then, after baking in the oven for an hour, it can be enjoyed by the whole family and one lucky guest.
Yeah. The bread lasts for about 2 months once it's been cooked, as long as it's kept in a cool room. So it's absolutely ideal for a winter treat, because you can eat it throughout December and keep going until Twelfth Night. This is fantastic. The bread is like a sort of really refined Christmas cake, and that coat, that crust on the outside is lovely. And then the butter is so crisp. Raw milk butter from cows I can see. And sitting here with the family all around, I can really see that this is the epitome of a Christmas cake or bread. I can just imagine the snow falling on the Tyrolese mountain, a roaring fire, and this in front of you. And it lasts for 2 months. So it's the perfect thing to make ahead for all those Christmas droppers in.
Christmas means good food, old friends, and great conversation. And today, I've got all three.
How you doing, boss? You all right? Good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
Because the king of TV chat, Sir Michael Parkinson's dropping by for dinner. We're both proud Yorkshiremen and huge pork lovers. So today, I'm cooking him the best present I can think of.
Now, I know you're a big fan of this particular meat as well.
I love pork, absolutely. I hate turkey as a Christmas dish. I hate turkey full stop. And this is the perfect Christmas dish in my view. Wonderful. I'm looking forward to it.
What do you normally have it with? How do you normally have yours then?
Well, I just have a loin of pork, basically, and a big crispy thing is all that stuff, all that big, you know, the traditional apple sauce and all that.
So do you venture into the kitchen then or not?
Not if I can help it. I mean, I learned how to cook when I was a kid.
Well, hopefully you're going to learn a little bit more now. Because what we've got in here, we're going to basically do spare ribs and pork belly, but with a barbecue sauce.
Yeah.
Right, and it's really simple, I promise you.
Yes.
All right? It's fantastic. Full of flavour, tastes delicious.
I start by placing the ribs and pork belly into a large saucepan and covering both with cold water.
Are you all right with a knife?
Depends.
What do you mean? It depends on what?
Depends on what with.
Right. You all right with that one?
Yeah.
Armed with that. It's very sharp, all right?
Yeah.
So, carrots, first of all.
Big pieces, little pieces.
Decent pieces, like that. Like that. We're going to chop it all up. So what was Christmas like for you then?
It was at home. The restaurants were unheard of.
Yeah.
Everybody chipped in. I had an auntie who was a wonderful pastry chef and...
This one.
And thanks. Yeah. And downwards, that way. Pastry chef and
your fingers.
Made lovely mince pies and things like that.
Right.
And my granny always did the main course.
Yeah.
And my father would do the potatoes,
Yeah.
because he liked them crispy and all that stuff. I'm being very careful because I nearly chopped my finger off the other day.
OK.
That's
it? It's fine.
okay?
That's fine. That's all right. That's all we need.
Add the chopped carrots and onions to the pan, along with some Christmas spices, including cinnamon, bay leaves, star anise and cloves.
Bring this to the boil.
Yeah.
And gently simmer this for about an hour. OK?
Yeah.
Now, while that's simmering over here, we're going to make our amazing barbecue sauce, all right? So, have you ever made barbecue sauce before?
Never.
Never?
Oh, it is the first.
Well, you can go home and impress the wife because you now know how to make barbecue sauce. Even with 3 ingredients is all you need. We're going to glam ours up. But all barbecue sauce is light brown sugar,
Yeah.
soy sauce,
Yeah.
and ketchup.
Wonderful. Sounds simple enough, yeah.
That's it. Now, because we've got the pork in here, and I've got to do something special for you, we'll then just use the Bramley apples, all right? Which I absolutely love. So we're going to use those as a base. Apples are great with pork, which we know you love.
Yes, indeed.
And it was an important sort of cut of meat for you around Christmas time, wasn't it?
We had a pig. We used to club together, about 8 of us, and buy this pig.
Right.
And we used to get it back of our next-door neighbour's garage and keep it there for all year and feed it and with all the potato peelings and all that stuff. And then the gamekeeper used to come down and kill it. And it lasted till Easter time, I suppose. But then one year, somebody nicked our pig.
Somebody nicked the pig?
Pinched it.
But that didn't go down too well with all
It
your
did
Yorkshire
not,
folk,
absolutely not, no. It was a very bad Christmas after that, I have to tell you.
So what was replacing the pig when somebody nicked it?
I think a bacon sandwich.
Now melt some butter in a pan and cook the apples for a few minutes till they're soft. Next, add the sugar, soy sauce and chili ketchup. Then add some teriyaki sauce, tamarind and maple syrup. Bring the sauce to the boil and stir on the heat for 5 minutes until the apple is smooth.
Oh, it's wonderful. I mean, that is dreamy. Beautiful.
All right?
Yeah, I love it.
So what's Christmas like for you then now at home? You have all the family around or?
Been in Australia for the past, I suppose, 20 years or more. In the main at Christmas time.
Right.
So you have then the Australian equivalent of what we try to do here.
And what's that like?
Well, I mean, it's madness because what they do, they pretend it's cold. So it's about 85, 90 degrees in Sydney. We're in this restaurant and Father Christmas arrives outside with sleigh bells and all that and gets out the sleigh and falls down because he collapses through heat stroke. So then we have this problem of taking his beard off and all that.
It's not the same as in Yorkshire though.
Once the ribs and the pork belly have cooked, allow them to cool in the pan. Then place the ribs onto a baking tray and put the pork belly to one side.
The great thing about this is you can make these in advance. Right, stick these in the fridge, in the liquid, and forget about it. I think that's everything out of there.
What was that thing that came out?
What's that?
What was that? A piece? Oh.
Cinnamon stick.
Oh, I see. Oh.
You thought it was just a piece of wood
a
that
piece
fell
of firewood, yeah.
Bit of firewood.
What it looked like. Can do postman.
There you go.
Now spoon half your barbecue sauce over the ribs and place them in a hot oven for 10 to 15 minutes, basting halfway through.
Now, while that's cooking, we can then turn our attention to this. And you've got the pork belly here.
Yep.
Now, the great thing about this, if you take it into chunks to get the pan nice and hot, I'm going to crisp up the fat, okay? So this is just the belly pork, like that. So we're going to colour this slightly.
You'll need to fry the pork bellies fat side down until they're golden brown. Then turn them onto the other side before spooning some of the barbecue sauce over the top.
See you smiling at it.
Well, I just think it's not very slimming, is it?
Look, it's my house. What do you expect?
Wonderful.
I get accused in this game of sort of using too much butter and cream and everything else. But I figure if I didn't use it, then there wouldn't be the need for healthy cookbooks.
This is true.
Well, at least alongside the ribs and the pork belly, I'm serving a slimline side salad of baby gem lettuce with a white balsamic vinegar dressing. The meat is ready, so let's pull this pork fest together.
We've got our pork ribs. Take these out. Our sticky glazed ribs. And then we can lift these out and put a rack of the ribs on here. Another
How
rack.
many are we inviting you for?
It's just me and thee,
Well,
lad.
that should be...
What?
Can you see the size?
It's just me and you.
Oh, gosh.
And we're going to grab the sauce, sprinkle over the top.
A final flourish with some chopped spring onions, and we're ready to dive in. Almost.
The pork pie?
I know.
Ah.
This is just for you.
Oh, gosh, how wonderful. This is my idea of paradise. I'm regarding paradise.
It's a pork fest.
It is indeed.
You take the salad.
Yes, sir.
And I'll take this.
Lovely.
Bon appetit.
Ah. Where are we going?
There's no starter, I'm afraid. This is it.
No starter. It's true.
Happy with that?
Well, that's proper food. There you go. The sauce is wonderful, and it's just right. That's so syrupy, tangy at the same time.
Yeah.
Gorgeous. You need a lot of these.
Well, that's the maple syrup, I think.
You make an absolute pig of yourself, don't you? I mean, you end up dribbling, and you end up so sauce all over your nose and your face. Posh restaurant.
Great dishes like these might not be classic Christmas fare, but when you can prepare most of them days, if not weeks in advance, I say you can hang tradition on the tree.
Cheers.
Okay. Cheers, mate, buddy.
Lovely seeing you.
Yeah, have a lovely Christmas.
You too.
Plan ahead, and it might just be the best Christmas ever.